Okay. So we're doing here in the class, uh, we're starting on 21b in Megilah. Okay? We did a new Mishnah. We started a new Mishnah. We're going to explain the Gemara now is actually going through the Mishnah, and we're going to explain different parts of the Mishnah. Now, one of the ideas that we generally know that you can't hear two voices together. When two people are speaking at the same time, you can't really hear. When we're listening to the Torah or listening to the Megilah or listening to something, we have to hear if we're fulfilling our obligation. If we hear the Torah, we hear the Megilah, we have to actually hear. So usually we say that you can't have two people saying at the same time because two voices cannot be heard together. You cannot hear together. So you cannot have two people read both at the same time. However, when you're reading something which is like so enjoyable and unique and something which is special, then even two voices can be heard because of the desire, if you pay special attention. Now, why should two people be saying it? But, people have a tendency that when you're reading, other people will sort of hum underneath, will also want to say or something. So we need to sort it out. What is okay? What is not okay? So says the Gemara, we're learning, we learned in a Braisa. But Torah, when we talk about Torah, Torah means every Shabbos or during the week, you'll see the Rosh Chodesh, whenever we read from the Torah, you can only have Echad Koida. You can only have one person reading. You can't have more than one person reading because then the people cannot fulfill their obligation. They cannot hear well. And also, you can only have the Echad Metargim. What is Metargim? Metargim means to translate. The way they used to have it in the olden days, that one person would read from the Torah, and then you had someone also giving it over in the Targum. Like we have the Targum Onkelos or this other Targum, but somebody would, in addition to the reading of the Torah, there would be someone reading and one person Metargum. Over there too, when they had the tradition to translate it, because the Torah is important, we'll see in the Rashi, we wanted to make sure that everybody hears perfect the reading of the Torah, as well as the translation, as well as the Targum of the Torah. But we don't want not the reading and not the translation. Ubilvad, and only as long you cannot have, even if you have only one read, but you can't have two people translating because we need to know and need to listen. Of course, you can't have more than one reading. What he's trying to say, even two people to translate is no good. Again, as Rashi will explain in a minute, that the Torah is so important that we want to make sure that both the reading is very clear and also the Targum. Rashi, the kol shekain, and of course, she'ein shnayim kodim, that two cannot read. He says you can't even have two translating. So for sure, we're not saying that you're gonna. For sure, you can't have two people read. The kol shekain she'ein shnayim kodim. For sure, you can't have two read. What's the reason? Zakt Rashi v'taima. The reason is mishum the trei koli loy mishtami. two voices cannot be heard. If you have two people reading, you don't hear anybody. You don't hear not this one and not that one. So therefore, only one reads. But Navi, when you read the Navi. Now, in nowadays, we read the Navi, we do the Haftorah. That's what the Navi, when we read. When do we read the Navi? When we do the Haftorah. We read the Haftorah from a book. Sometimes some shuls, they had a tradition, they would read the Navi from a scroll, like a Sefer Torah. But by Navi, it's not as important as the reading of the Torah. The reading of the Navi was instituted later on, where they didn't allow them to read from the Torah, so they had to substitute it, and then they read it from the Navi. So by a Navi, over there, it's one has to read it because you have to hear it, because you have to be clear. But ushnayim metargimim. In order the translation, you can have two people read the translation. That would be okay. Shnayim metargimim. And Rashi explained. Ubenavi afilu echad koire ushnayim metargimim. Even one, you have to have one read, but you can even have two people translating. Even two people translating is okay. Why? Why is that okay? But you say the reading has to be one. And you said before you can't hear two voices. Why is it okay for the Navi to have two people metargim? So he says, Sha'atargum einoi elo la'ashmiya l'noshim v'amei haaretz. The reason for the Targum is to let hear the women and the lay people, the ignorant people, she'einon makirin v'l'shoin hakodesh. They don't recognize the holy tongue. They don't understand the language of the Navi. So in order for them to also participate in the reading of the Torah and the Nevi'im, we do the Targum. We have it read out in the translation so they can understand. He says, V'hatargum hu laz hababelim. The Targum, that is the language, the laz, loshen amzu, that is the language of the Babylonians. So the Targum that we have is the Babylonians, from Iraq. They are the ones that speak. Their language was the language of Targum. So it says like this. So therefore, when we talk about the Torah, which is more important, but Targum shel Torah, when we talk about the translation of the Torah, over there, tzrichim onu lachzoir sheyehu mevinim es hamitzvos. Over there, we need to go after so that they should understand the mitzvahs, because the Torah gives us the mitzvahs, and we want the women and the lay people don't know Hebrew, to also know about the mitzvahs. Avol b'shel nevim. But when we talk about the prophets, that's not halacha. I mean, that's not laws of the mitzvahs. It's the stories of the Nevi'im. Like kabdi alayu kuli hai. So the rabbis weren't so particular that if you want to have somebody else reading the Targum at the same time, okay, nish geferlach. That's not such a big problem, because anyways, it doesn't have mitzvahs in there, just the story. So the Targum would be okay. That's why over here we also allow Ushnayim Targum. But there too, that only applies to the translation, which is done for the women and the people that don't speak Hebrew. But the actual reading can't have two people reading. Bilvad, and the condition is Shaloi Ushnayim Koidim, Ushnayim Metargimim. But provided you can't have two people read. Two people metargim, yes, but not two people read at the same time. Why? Because the reading is more important. Over there, the reading is for the people that understand directly from there, so therefore they have to hear every single word, and they can't have two voices doing it together. But the Targum, the rabbis don't care. Now, what about situations in which are unique and everybody's excited. Like the Megillah, we're going to leave. Over there, you hear, even if there's a few voices, you can still hear, you can still tell, because it is something which is unique and is something which is special to you. So therefore, you can hear even that. So he says now, when you read the Hallel, the Hallel, each one reads it on his own. But sometimes they have one person reads the Hallel and he fulfills everybody their obligation, so that they just listen to the Hallel that the other person is saying. And also by Megillah. So over there is the din is unique. Afilu asora kodim asora metargimin. Even if you have 10 people reading at the same time, and you have 10 people translating, it doesn't matter. Why? Because, as the Gemara says, my timer. What's the reason? We're going to get back to the Rashi in a minute. Kivon de chaviva yahavi datayu v'shami. Since it is dear, it's special. The Megillah, the Hallel, people put their minds and they can hear. So that even if you have more than one person reading Hallel and more than one person reading the Megillah, or even as the Gemara says that you have 10 people reading the Hallel and reading the Megillah, it is okay because you put your mind to it and you have all these people reading, you're still able to hear. Okay. There is, however, Hallel, we know, Hallel doesn't have a Targum, right? What about the Megillah? Rashi argues that Megillah doesn't have a Targum either. There's no Targum for the Megillah. Because Megillah is part of the Kisuvim. In Rashi, it says we should not have these words in this sentence over here, because there's no Targum at all. Hallel doesn't have Targum, and Megillah doesn't have Targum either, because it's Kisuvim. So therefore, Rashi says, "Vasodim metargimin loy garsinon." We do not have this version. The correct version should not have said, does not say asodim metargimin. She'ein targum b'ksuvim. There is no targum in the ksuvim, and therefore, this is not correct. This language, you can just say and the reason is because kivan the chaviva yavi datay v'shamay. Since it's there, they pay attention and they listen. Okay. The Gemara further now goes on to explain the Mishnah. The Mishnah seemed to say that making a bracha for the Megillah is optional, because the Mishnah says, "Mokim shenogu levorech." This is quoting from the Mishnah. If it's a place where the custom is to make a bracha for the Megillah, yivorech, to make a bracha. Now one assumes now that he's talking about the bracha that you make before the Megillah. When we make a bracha before the Megillah, we say Asher Kishonu b'mitzvaysa, Mikra Megillah. Okay, we say Shosar Nisim, we say Shechiyonu. So one assumes that when the Mishnah said that you don't make a bracha, if it's the place to make a bracha, you make a bracha. But if you don't have a custom to make, that would be an option. The Gemara says, no. This option that we're talking about is talking about the after bracha. The bracha that you make after you finish the Megillah, we make the bracha, Roves, Rivenu, Vadonas, Dinenu. That bracha could be optional. But the first bracha is not optional. As you know, every mitzvah that we do, we always make a bracha. but we don't always make an after bracha. Matter of fact, that most of the time, when we eat food, as a brichsanani, we make an after bracha. But when you blow the shofar, for example, you make a bracha before you blow the shofar. There's no after bracha. I mean, you say psukim over there, but there's no bracha over there that follows. The same thing is by the lulav, and the same thing is by the sukkah, the same thing is by the matzah, the same thing is by all the mitzvahs we do. There is no after bracha. So when we said in the Mishnah that where the tradition is to make a bracha, then you make it. If it's a tradition not to, you don't make it. It's talking about the after bracha. We're not talking about the bracha that comes before the mitzvah. That's across the board. That's not dependent on any custom. Zog the Gemara, quoting the Mishnah, place where there's a custom, make a bracha, you make a bracha. Amar Abaye says Abaye loishonu elolachareho, that we only learn this option to make a bracha or not is about the after bracha. Aval lefoneho mitzvah levore, but before the Megilah, it is a mitzvah to make a bracha. If you're doing a mitzvah, there's a mitzvah to read the Megilah, there's a mitzvah to make a bracha. The Omar Rabbi Yehuda Omar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Shmuel. Kol ha-mitzvahs kulam. All mitzvahs. Mevorech aleihem oiver la'asiyosam. Ahead, before doing them, oiver, ahead of doing them, you make a bracha. Oiver la'asiyosam, before you do a mitzvah, you always make a bracha. So therefore, that's not optional. What the Mishnah makes optional is the after bracha. Now, the usual language that the Gemara would use, kol ha-mitzvahs kulam mevorech aleihem, lifnei asiyosam, before you do them, or koidem asiyosam, before you do them. Here, it uses lashon oiver, ahead of. The Gemara is trying to find out what does it mean exactly, the language of oiver, ahead of, before. It's a little bit of a strange language. It's not koidem, it's not lifnei, it's oiver. Oiver means sort of ahead of doing that. Frag the Gemara, that's what the Gemara interrupts now to understand. My mashma, why does it appear the high oiver, that when we say we hear the word oiver, lishna dagdumehi, that means a language of before. That when it says oiver, it means agdume, koidem. Now before we do the mitzvah. It's a language. Maybe it means kol ha-kutzim oiver, once you pass when doing them. Maybe oiver means pass. What does an avera mean? Avera means you pass. You go not ahead, before, but it means you pass. Maybe. So the Gemara wants to know, where do we find the word oiver meaning ahead of, before? My mashma, where is the understanding, the high oiver, that when it says here oiver, is lishna dagdumihu. This is a language of that comes first, before, ahead of. So the Gemara is going to bring various different psukim to show where the word oiver is used in the context of ahead of. Omar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Omar Kro. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, well, let's take a look at the pasuk. So this is a pasuk in Shmuel Beis. In Perik Yud Ches, in Shmuel Beis. So over there it says, Vayoratz Achimotz derech hakikor. Achimotz was running on the road of the plain. Vayavoir es hakushi, and he passed ahead of the kushi. So yaver here means ahead of like over ahead of doing it, before doing it. Over there it says vayaver esakushi, meaning vayikadem esakushi. He came koidem, he came before the kushi. He passed him so that he went ahead of him. So here it means you do the bracha ahead of the siyam. Another pasuk, Abaye brings another pasuk, from here. This is a pasuk by Yaakov when he's bringing the gift to Esav. So then it says, "V'hu ovar lifneim." He passed ahead of them. So that means that ahead of the group, Yaakov hu ovar lifneim. He passed ahead of them. The ibo yisema, and another possibility I can say mehacha. I guess this is still Abaye saying another pasuk. It says in Micha, it says there, "Vayavir malkom lifneim, v'Hashem beroisham." It says the king went before them. So again, the word Vayavir means he went ahead. Hashem, their king, Hashem will go ahead of them. So these are all just psukim to show that over means ahead, that you do the mitzvahs ahead of doing it. So the Gemara, okay. Frag the Gemara, the foneho mai mevorach. So what is the bracha that you make before you read the Megilah? So the Gemara says, Rab Sheishas mikat razio. Rab Sheishas from the place. It's the name of a place. Rashi says right away. Mikat razio is mokom. It's the name of a place. Rab Sheishas of the place of Kat razio. Ikro lekamei de Rav Ashi. He happened to come before Rav Ashi, and I guess he was reading the Megilah. Uborich, and the bracha that he made was Mem Nun Ches. Mem stands for Megilah, Mikra Megilah. Nun stands for Nisim, and the Ches stands for Shechiyonu. He made the three brachas. When he came before Rav Ashi, he made these three brachas. And Rashi spells it out, Manach Min Nun Ches, which is Al Mikra Megilah. That's the Mem. Sha'oson Nisim, that's the Nun. And Shechiyonu, that's the Ches. And those are the three brachas. The Gemara asks, Lachareho mai mevorech. What is the after bracha, after reading the Megillah? So the Gemara said, the bracha is, Baruch ato Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam, harov esrivenu, one who judges our judgment, who takes care of our judgment. Badones dinenu, rules our judgment. Va'noikim nikmosenu, who revenges our vengeance. Va'nifra lonu mitzoreina, and the one who collects for us from our enemies. Va'mshalan gemulu choloivin avshenu, and the one who pays back the deserving to all those that hate our souls. Baruch atah Hashem, hanifra li Yisrael mikol tzareim, the one who pays back to the Yidden from all of their oppressors. Basically, this is actually the bracha that we do today after the reading of the Megillah. But the Gemara also adds, Rav Omar, to add Hokel HaMashiach, the God who helps. And we do it also, we incorporate it. Because we have two opinions. We have the other opinion to say, so Hokel HaMashiach. Let's say them both. Baruch atah Hashem, hanifra l'Yisrael mikol tzareim, Hokel HaMashiach. It's all incorporated there. That's what we do at the end of the bracha. Okay. So we know now the beginning bracha. We have three brachas. We know now the end bracha. And we know now that the beginning bracha are not optional. Everybody has to say them. And we know that the end bracha is optional. If it's accustomed to say it, you say it. the custom is not to say, then you don't say. Okay, then we'll go to the next part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said how many aliyahs you get on the different times. So on Monday and Thursdays, and by Mincha Shabbos, B'Sheni on Monday, Ubachamishi and on Thursday, and B'Mincha, and on Mincha Shabbos, Koydin Shloisha V'Chulu, then we read 3 people get aliyahs. And Rosh Chodesh is 4, Yom Tov is 5, and Kippur is 6, and Shabbos is 7. But the Gemara says, as Hani Shloisha Keneged me. Who does these 3 aliyahs, what do they correspond to? I mean, 3, why 3? I mean, what? It's a number, it has to have some significance. So the Gemara comes up with several 3s that may be connected. Why we have 3 aliyahs? Amar Abasi, says Rabasi, Keneged Torah Nevi'im Uksumim. 3, because the Torah has 3 parts to it. There's Tanakh, we have the Torah. We have the Nevi'im, the prophets. Ksuvim, we have the writings. 3 parts of the Torah, we have 3 aliyahs. Okay. Rava Omar, Rava says, the Jewish people are divided into 3 parts. We have Kohanim, we have Levim and Yisraelim. He says, Keneged Kohanim, Levim, Yisraelim. I mean, that would very well fit with the aliyahs. The first aliyah goes to the Kohen, the second aliyah goes to the Levi, and the third aliyah goes to the Yisrael. So that makes a lot of logic. It makes fits well. Well, the Gemara asks, well, you're trying to make fitting things in. You have number 3, but let me ask you then, how are you going to fit in the number 10? We know that these 3 aliyahs have to have 10 psukim. So between all the aliyahs of the first, second, and third, you have to cover at least 10 verses. Why 10? The Gemara is asking. The Gemara. But this, we learned, Rabbi Simi said, Ein poichasin miyud psukim bebeis hakneses. You cannot have less than 10 psukim in the Beis Knesset. In other words, when you read from the Torah, you have to have at least 10 psukim. And he says also that Vaidaber oila min haminyan. The pasuk Vaidaber Hashem al Moshe Lamer, that's a pasuk which is repeated many times in the Chumash. And that pasuk technically doesn't teach us anything new. It's just saying Hashem spoke to Moshe Lamer. But for the purposes of 10 psukim, Vayidaber oilam min haminyan. Vayidaber can be counted part of the minyan. Vayidaber can be part of the 10. Vayidaber can be part of the 10. Basically, Rashi says, Vayidaber oilam min haminyan, Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lamer. Although it doesn't teach us anything, still it's one of the 10. So what he wants to know, the Gemara, Hani Asora Keneged me. So these 10 psukim are correspond to whom? So you have three aliyahs, and you say now you need 10 psukim. Why 10? I guess if you're doing 3, you should maybe give each one 3 and have 9. Why all of a sudden 10? Just like 3 aliyahs, give each one 3 psukim. I'm trying to figure out what the follow-up to the Gemara says, Elo, but how? Maybe you give 3 aliyahs. Since the 3 aliyahs, give each one 3 psukim. Why 10? Why between the 3 needs to be 10 psukim? What is it correspond, connected me. Amar Rabbi Shimon Levi says Rabbi Shimon Levi connected Asoda Batlonim Shebebeis HaKnesses. This corresponds to the 10 Batlonim. Those are people that don't work. They're always in the shul. In the olden days, you think only we have a problem with the minyan. In the time of the Gemara, they had a problem with the minyan too. So what did they do? They'd hire people. So they'd pay 10 people to always be available. They're called the 10 Batlonim in the shul. And they don't go to work, so they don't have to rush. I probably would add, they don't have to take the kids to school. They don't have to do carpool. And they don't have to do other things. So they're always available for the minyan. So because there is 10 Batlonim to make sure that there's always a minyan, and we had it in the Gemara before, that's called an Ir Gedolah. It's a big city. They can afford to hire 10 people to be there always available for the minyan. I mean, you think if there's a big city, there's be a lot of people there so they can come to the minyan. But you need 10 Batlonim. So he says that the reason there's 10 Psukim to correspond to the 10 Batlonim. All right. Again, it seems like we have to check out when was it instituted that to have these 10 Batlonim. When was it instituted to have the 10 Psukim? Seems like they're associated according to this idea. Rabbi Yosef Omar, he has another idea. He says, Keneged Haseras Hadibris Shenemru L'Moshe B'Sinai. Those are corresponding to the 10 sayings that were said to Moshe at Sinai. Was 10 there. We have 10 psukim to correspond to those. Another suggestion, Rabbi Yochanan says, Keneged Asora Mamoris Shebehem Nivra, corresponding to the 10 sayings which Hashem created the world. So you read in the Parsha Bereshis, there is 9 times actually that it says Vayomer Hashem, God said Vayomer Elikim. So the Gemara says there's only 9. Which are the 10 sayings? So the Gemara says Vayomer the Bereshis. Those are the saying that says that's the Vayomer the Bereshis. The Gemara, but Hani Tisha B'Av, there's only 9 over there. So what do you have 10? And the Gemara answers Bereshis Nami Maimerhu. That the word Bereshis is also considered a saying. Just like the Eibishter created with the other 9 sayings, it says, let there be light, let there be the firmament, let there be the animals, whatever. There's also, Bereshis is also considered a saying. Rashi explains that what it says in the Pasuk, in the beginning, Bore Lekim es Hashemayim v'Oretz, even it doesn't say, Vayomer Lekim Yehi Shemayim v'Oretz, but the Bereshis becomes the Maimer also, even though there's no Vayomer over there. Bereshis Nami, the Bereshis is also a Maimer. The Mishtoyi b'Shemayim v'Oretz, because that talks about Shemayim v'Oretz, so that is a Maimer, that's a saying. Who says the Ksiv? Because there is another verse in the Tehillim, it says, Bidvar Hashem, Shamayim Nasu, that the world was made with the word of Hashem. So we see clearly there was a Yomer, there was a word of Hashem, there was a Dvar Hashem, which brought about the heavens. So even though it doesn't say in the Pasuk Hashem said, but we're saying that Bereshis, that talks about Shamayim V'Oretz, is also a Maimer. And with the air of his mouth, all the armies that fill the world. So Bereshis is another word. This beginning, the Shemayim V'Oretz, Nami Maimer Rashi, Maimer hu Avheim b'Maimer Nivru. They too were created with a Maimer, what it's saying. The Ksiv, because the Pasuk says in Tehillim, Bidvar Hashem Shemayim Nasu, Uvruach Piv Kol Tzvam. That with the word of Hashem, the heavens were made. So even though there is no Vayomer there, but it's still the Dvar Hashem, and therefore makes it 10. Correspond to the 10 sayings. That's why we have 10 psukim in the reading of the Torah. Okay. Amar Rava. So now we have a little bit of an issue. What do you mean an issue? So we said we have how many aliyahs? 3. How many psukim do we have to read? 10. How are you going to divide 10 by 3 aliyahs? If you had 9 psukim, you would do 3, 3, 3, and everybody will be happy. But now that you have 10, that means one of them has to do 4. Who does the 4? So the way Rashi explains it, that first we try to give the first one 4. If we can't or we didn't, we'll do it to the second one. If we can't or we didn't, we'll do it with the third one. There is, first try goes to the first one. Amar Rava, said Rava, Rishon Shekora Dalet. If it is the first one, the Kohen, that read 4, the Kohen that read 4, Meshubach, is praiseworthy. Which means, give the Kohen or give the first Aliyah, called the Rishon over here. You get the first 4 psukim. If you didn't get it, Sheni Shekora Daled Meshubach. The second one gets the 4 praiseworthy. And if all 3 didn't get it, the third one, Shlishi Shekora Daled Meshubach, the third one that reads Dal Meshubach. The Rashi, I want to read the Rashi. The Rashi actually comes at the end. I think it's maybe out of place that it should be over here. But let's learn the Rashi. Rashi says, Rishon min shloisha shekora arba psukim. The first of the 3 who reads the 4 psukim is praiseworthy. V'chein sheni. The same thing is the second one is praiseworthy. The second of the 3, and v'chein shlish, then the third. Rashi explains. If the first one didn't do it, and the second one read the 4 psukim, or if it wasn't read not by the first one, not by the second one, not about psukim, the 4 psukim, and the third one reads it, then he's praiseworthy. Rashi just adds one more thing. If there is space in the portion that they're reading for kol echad arba psukim, for each one 4 psukim, kulam mishabachim, so they're all praiseworthy. So in other words, we try to give first the 4 psukim to the first one, then to the second one, to the third one, and if each one would read 4, it's even praiseworthy. So where do we have now? It seems like the first one is special, the second one is special, and the third one is special. Because each one we want to give. The Gemara is now going to bring other areas in which we see that the first one is special, and that sometimes that we see that the second one is special, second one meaning the middle one is special, and sometimes we're going to see that the last one is special. And that's why, in essence, either one who gets to read is actually special. So the Gemara. Rishon Shekora Daled Meshubach. The first thing it says, the first one that reads 4 is praiseworthy. In other words, the first one is unique, is special. Where do we find that? The Tanakh, we learned in the Mishnah. So what used to happen in the Beis Hamikdash, the people used to bring all the half of shekels that they had to bring, and they used to bring it, put it into the room, which is called a lishka, and then they would take basically 3 buckets, fill it up with the shekels. They would fill up bucket number 1, they would write Aleph. They fill up bucket number 2, write Beis. Fill up bucket number 3. And then they would use those shekels to purchase the animals that they needed for the korbanos. So first they went to the number 1, and then they went to the number 2, and then they went to number 3. So you see that being designated number 1 has advantages, and that's why they went first to Aleph. Let's look inside. The Tanakh, we learned in the Mishnah. V'sholosh kupos shel sholosh soim. In the 3 buckets, each bucket was the size of 3 soim. Shabahem toirmin esalishka. In them, in these big buckets, they would separate the lishka. They would give the truma, the separation from the collections of all the shekels that were lying in the lishka, in the room, from the gifts. They would put it into those. Toirmim, who is the one that would raise the truma or separate it from the lishkas? Kahanim esa lishka. The Kahanim would do the truma from that room where they put all the shekels. They would put the mishikle shonazu from the shkolim of this year that the people separated letoicha into that kupas, liknois mem korbanos tzibur l'kol hashana, to purchase the communal sacrifices for the entire year. V'hoya kasuv aleihem. On them was written Aleph Beis Gimel. Aleph Beis Gimel. 1, 2, 3. Why? There's 3 buckets there. Just take from any bucket. No. They had Aleph Beis Gimel, Leidu Eizu Mehem Nitra Morishan, so that we know which one of these buckets have been separated first. And Lahakriv Mimena Rishon, so that you can sacrifice from that bucket first. Shemitzvah Berishon, there's a mitzvah with the first one. Okay, so this tells us that what? That the first one to get the 4 aliyahs, just like over there, we see the first one to get the shekels, that's the mitzvah. Okay? Now, then we said the second one. Second one happens to be a mitzoyi. He's the middle one. Shekor arba. We also say mishubach, right? If you reason for it, mishubach. Why is that? The Tanya. We find that there is something about the middle one. The middle one so the menorah had 3 branches on each side, which each one would have a vessel in which you put the oils and the wick in. So that's called the nair. The nair is what is the holder of the oil and the wick. So there were 6 on the 6 branches, 3 on this side and 3 on that side. And then there was the middle one. So the middle one was the most important part of the menorah, because the pasuk says, El Mul Pnei HaMenorah, facing the main branch of the menorah itself. Because the first one was not a branch, that was the actual stick that went all the way to the bottom. And there was 3 coming out. The other 3 lamps were facing this middle lamp. So how did it work? It worked like you had the wicks on the right side of the middle stem were tilted towards the middle. The wicks on the left side were tilted towards the middle. And the middle one stood up straight. Why were all faced? Because it shows that the middle one has significance. That's what the Gemara is going to say. But we need to know another point. The Gemara refers to that middle stem as the western lamp. Why would the middle stem be called the western lamp? Rashi explains there are basically 2 opinions. You know, when you went into the Ohel Moed, when you went into the Beis Hamikdash, you went in from the east, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim was always in the west. So you walk in from the east, and you go towards the west. That's how you walk. That's the way the Mishkan is situated. Now, there are 2 opinions. The opinion we're going now that we call this the western lamp believes that the lamp was situated from north to south, so that it was not the length, but actually the width. It was north to south. That one says that all of the sides, the 3 to the sides, they were facing the middle one. But those wick were in the middle of the lamp. So the lamp has a certain space, but the wick of the middle one that went straight up, that was leaning against the western wall of the lamp, facing the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So if you put a straight line on the lamps, the middle lamp would be a little bit towards the west, towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The other ones from the sides, they were in the middle, facing the middle one. But the middle one went straight up, but it was a little bit out towards the Ma'ariv one. And that's why we call it Ner Maravi. It doesn't fit with the other opinion that says that it was standing from east to west, from east to west. So over there, the Ner Maravi would be the second lamp, not the middle one. So this goes like, we'll see in the Rashi. Let's look inside now. What is the basis that the middle one that reads 4 is praiseworthy? The Tanya. Because we learned in Ebraisa. It says in the Pasuk Megilah El Mul Pnei HaMenorah Yo'ilu, that towards the face of the menorah they should shine. Melamed, this teaches us, Shemitzadid Pneihem Klape Ner Maravi, that you side their facing towards the western Ner. I already told you which is the western lamp according to this Brisa. It's the middle one. They have to face the middle. He calls it the western one. That western, so they're all facing the western one, and the Ner Maravi was facing the Shechina. He was facing the divine towards the west, because the Kodesh HaKadoshim was in the west, in the west. Let's look at the Rashi. Mul, and therefore, Rabbi Yochanan, so Rabbi Yochanan says, Mekan, so here we see that the middle one is the praiseworthy, because That was the closest to the Shekhinah. It went over there. So that's why the second one who gets the Aliyah, he says he should read the 4 psukim. Again, Amul Pnei HaManoira Yirush Shuvas HaNevis. So Rashi said, what does the pasuk mean? The Mul Pnei Ner, facing towards the face of the Ner, Shebeguf HaManoira, which is in the menorah itself, not in the branches. That's the middle one. Shuam Tzoyi. So he would side the neighbors. So basically, the lamps to the right were pointing towards the middle, and the left to the left pointed toward the middle. They were all pointing. Everything was going towards the middle, which is the Ner Maravi. So Rashi says, Ner Maravi hu Ner Emtsoi. That's the middle lamp. And Rashi explains that this is only Lamanda Omar Neirus Sofim Vedorim Monochim. That the way the lamps were situated, they were from north to west, north to south. They were placed. Havi and Tsoyi Moshuch Kimo Klapi Mari. So the middle one was a little bit drawn towards the west. Chutz Mishar Neiris, outside of the other lamps. So if you made a line across, they were all at this point, and the middle one was a little bit ahead in front towards the west. And Rashi says it doesn't go fit according to the other one. The Lamanda Omar, Ma'irivu Mizrach Manochim, the one that says that the situation where they were placed from east to west, Loi, then it is not the middle lamp. Over there, the Maravi would be the second lamp, the one that is going towards second from Mizrach. In other words, starting off going towards the west. So the one after the first one, which was the east, the second one from the east is called the west one. So that doesn't fit according to this. So here, the Ner Maravi is according to the opinion that they were standing from north to south. So we find in the Gemara. Here we know that the middle one is praiseworthy. Finally, the last one that would read the 4 together is also praiseworthy. Mishum Mailin Bakodesh Veloy Barim, because of the idea that we always go higher in holiness and never go lower in holiness, which means this is the first one read 3, the second one read 3. You got to do a little more. Mailin Bakodesh. Do 4, go 1 more, always go higher. We don't want the first ones to read 4 and you're going to do less. That's why we want the last one to be the more. So they're all fine. The Gemara finally says that Papa Iklo Lebeknishta the Abi Guvar. Papa came to the shul of Abi Guvar, Rishin Arba, and he read the 4 for the first one. The Shabbat Rapapa, and then Rapapa praised them. Okay, we'll leave it here. Just a quick word because we're almost out of time over here. Of the Parshas Noach. Just the general idea, most of the people look at the flood as a punishment that Hashem wiped out the world because they didn't behave. But in the Hasidic thought, in addition to being a punishment, there was also a cleansing. It was a purification of the world. It wasn't just getting back at them. It was cleaning the world and helping it reinvent it so that it will be pure. That's why it's explained it was 40 days. You know, a mikveh needs to have 40. So it was like a mikveh. The whole world was thrown into the mikveh. So you had the flood over there. everything in the world was sort of purified. And the Rebbe speaks in the Maimer and the Torah and other places. He says that flood waters are sort of distractions sometimes. They represent ideas that we try to do the service of Hashem, we try to do what's right, and then we have distractions. They're called the Mayim Rabim, like the floodwaters. They're called the floodwaters, and a lot of times our livelihood, our family situations, we're struggling. There's hardships, there's struggles, and there's difficulties. So the Rebbe says that those difficulties, they clean us, they challenge us, they make us better, they put us in a higher place, they put us in a stronger place. Just like the mikveh was elevated, and if a person finds it difficulties in his ways, those are not just interferences, but rather they get the person to be stronger and be more determined and be more connected and more committed. So if you find in your life challenges, you find difficulties, don't let it bring you down. Just on the contrary, take that, let it clean you and make you in a higher level. To a certain extent, Rebbe writes, people that learn Torah all the time, that's one level, but people that don't have the time all the time, and then they tear themselves away to find some time to go to the minyan, to find some time to learn some Torah, find some time to do some mitzvahs. That's actually, in a way, reaches even in a higher level because of the challenges and the distractions that they encounter, makes them even on a higher madrega than even those that are sitting and studying and learning and sort of have it easy all day. Okay, so this will be our lesson for today. Hope we learned something, and I hope that everybody will join me again next week.